Let's go to Leslie in Richmond, Virginia. What's up, Leslie?
Thank you so much, John. I understand there's allergies. We've got those here too. Everybody's got it.
I'm hoping that's what it is. Yeah. So it makes me sound, I don't know, like cooler, more wise, like I'm tough. I don't know. I haven't imagined. Listen to you.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me that, Leslie. Hey, so what's up? How can I help?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your program. I started listening several months ago, and I started from the first episode. I've made it to January 2021, so I have learned so much, and thank you so much.
Hey, so I haven't done that. In fact, I've listened to a grand total of none of these shows. Is it getting better?
That might be for the best.
Is it getting better?
It is. Oh, remarkably. I have noticed so much. I mean, it started out great, and it has just done nothing but improve.
It was pretty wobbly.
Around.
It was not great. I mean, I used to watch James went home. He was on a lot. He was just taking Tums by the. I mean, it was tough. And Kelly was drinking a lot. I mean, not drinking a lot. She wasn't drinking a lot. She wasn't. She wasn't. I told her I wouldn't make that joke anymore.
A lot of coffee.
A lot of coffee, and creatine and other positive supplements, protein shakes, things like that. But anyway, thank you so much.
Good stuff.
I appreciate that.
All right.
So how can I help you?
I've got a lot going on in my life right now. I'm in my mid-50s and had some issues with both of my grown sons. But the thing that I'm calling about today is our 26-year-old son told us last summer that he's been taking female hormones for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he wants us to call him Rachel.
Okay.
And then about a month later, he moved to Houston to live with his partner, who is also a trans woman.
Okay.
About once a week, I text him just to make sure he's okay, and he texts back. But other than a call at Christmas, we haven't spoken.
Okay.
My husband and I have made plans to visit him in late June. We told him that we have no agenda, but that we love him and we miss him.
Okay.
My question is, how do we deal? Excuse me.
Now, take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. How do we deal with the name pronoun issue?
Mm-hmm.
If calling him Rachel and using feminine pronouns compromises our values, then how do we open a line of communication with him and build our relationship?
So one, thank you for your trust. This one's hard.
It is.
So let me back out a little bit. Tell me why over the last year or so, or let me ask you before that. Was this a total shock to you, a surprise to you? How old did you say he was?
26.
26, okay.
Okay, so he had moved out to go to college, and that didn't go well, but he was living with a roommate.
What does not go well? What does not go well mean?
He didn't do well in college. He's
academically,
super
socially,
intelligent, but academically mainly.
Okay.
But it's because I'm not really sure what the issue is there, because he's super smart. He could tell you just about any line in the Narnia series. I mean, he's just super, super smart. But
So let me stop you there.
I'm sure he's.
So that so having worked with college students for the vast majority of my career, I ran into that a lot, and that suggests there were other things going on in his life or in her life.
Definitely, I don't doubt that at all.
Okay.
So as far as going back to whether it was a shock to us, being a trans woman was a shock to us.
Okay.
We suspected there were things going on, and I suspected, even though he'd had a girlfriend for 6 years, when he broke up with her, I really strongly started suspecting that he was having, I don't know, I just figured there was something going on, but I didn't know that it was the trans woman. I had no clue. So that hit us out of the blue.
So I don't want to gloss over. Did you think I've got inklings that my son's gay?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And
his roommate seemed gay, but they didn't seem to be in a relationship. I mean, He called me from 2 hours away to come get him when he had kidney stones, instead of asking his roommate to take him to the hospital. So I didn't really see them in a relationship, but I could tell that he was very feminine.
Yeah. Well, So I've got a number of gay friends that I'm not in a relationship with. So just being in proximity doesn't mean anything.
Right. And that's how I saw it at the time.
Yeah. Here's why I'm asking. I've had this conversation. I can't count the number of parents I've sat down and had this conversation with, and it's not rare. It's rather common, not always, but rather common, what you just said. I felt that my son or daughter was struggling, was having some identity, like questioning who they were and what they were. And so there's a lot of layers to this, and so I'm going to walk through it backwards, forwards, okay? And I'll get to your final question here, but I want to address you and your husband along the way here.
Right. Thank you.
The guilt and regardless of what the outcome is, whether it's an outcome that you have a agreement with, alignment with, value with, whatever. I've never yet, that's not true. I've met a couple and they're jerks. I've never met parents, or rarely met parents, who don't feel guilt along the way that I can't believe my kid was wrestling with something so heavy and I wasn't there to walk alongside him.
Right.
And it's a parents bang their head against the wall and they feel deep shame. And often the actions that come next come out of that shame, and I should have been there, and I can't believe my kid was hurting like that all alone, and fill in the blank. And whether you agree with the pronouns or anything, you agree with that or not, everybody can agree that kids that are wrestling with gender identity, am I a man, am I a woman, who am I going to be, who am I going to love, that they are really going through a hard time. Like there's elevated suicide risk, there's elevated mental health challenges.
Exactly.
It's a devastating time. And so as a parent, gosh, I wish I'd been there, right? So it's important for you to own that, and it's going to be real important when you re-engage with your child, okay?
Okay.
That you come to the table with here's what I'm feeling, and we should have been there for you, and I'm sorry, right? There's that sense of whether you should have or shouldn't have been. He also or she also was an adult and could have had that come back, right? He had a responsibility to talk to you. It is what it is. I think it's important to be open with how you feel. So then they moved to Houston and they've got a relationship. Why have you just texted? What has taken you so long to engage?
Right. Well, we text about once a week because I just need to know that he's okay.
But why haven't you gotten on a plane and come and looked your child in the eye and said, I love you?
Right. Well, my job makes it so it's easier for me to go once when I have a break. So it'll be easier for me to go now. But I don't know why. I have no answer for why I didn't go earlier. I've been wrestling with so many things. But I don't think that I can honestly say we've never had good communication in our home with any of us. We're not good at we're great communicators, but not together. And that's what I have seen when I've evaluated the past. And that's what I'm trying to fix with both of my children.
So I'm going to be pretty direct with you. Is that okay?
Okay, that's okay.
I don't care about your job. Right. And I don't care about how easy your job it's easier on a break or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Your child came to you and said, Mom, I'm hurting. And you've spent the last 6 months texting. And so that's one of those moments, not to change the outcome, there's not an ROI on this.
Right.
There is you're my baby.
Right.
And I know you're hurting. And I know you've been sitting on stuff.
He did come right after we found out. He came and spent a week with us.
Okay.
Before he moved to Texas.
And how did that week go?
It was like normal. He didn't seem feminine, and it was so normal. And we had kind of normal interactions. We fell into our same routines. I had one talk with him that was that was a very good talk with him. That was mostly positive, 90% positive.
Okay.
with him during that week, but because we just don't have good communication with
But,
each
hey, listen,
other,
listen.
it was difficult.
You are the parent.
Right,
Good communication starts with you.
right,
And so it's not this amorphous thing that we just don't have, like money. Like we just don't have money. Like
right, yeah.
good communication is a choice.
Okay, so I haven't learned how to have a good conversation with my children.
Okay, here's where that starts and ends with, I love you. And I'm so glad you're my child. Full stop, period at the end of that sentence. And then we're just going to hug for a while. That's where it starts. There's not a sophisticated entry. It doesn't need to have like a bunch of check boxes. It starts with, I love you and you're my kid.
I can do that.
And there will come seasons when they'll look at you and say, why now? What happened at 14 and what happened at 18? And there's going to be some guilt there, and there's going to be some shame there, there's going to be some frustration there. And what you'll have to do is own what happened. It is. And you'll have to look at your kids and say, I was the adult, and I didn't have good communication, and I'm sorry. And only thing I can do now is get better moving forward. That's your choice. Or the other choice is just to continue to walk around and go, we just don't have good communication in our house. We just don't have it.
Yeah. No, I don't want to do that.
So jump in with both feet.
Okay.
Okay. And don't, let me say it this way. Don't overcomplicate it.
Okay.
Don't overcomplicate it.
That's good for me to hear because I do that.
Yeah, don't. And here's where you are now. Now you're at a place where you need to be super, super, super honest. I put my job before this relationship, or I waited for things to get convenient. And quite honestly, I was scared because I didn't know how to do it. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. That nails it.
And so, listen, they have felt that for 26 years, your kids.
Right.
They felt the gap. They felt that's more important, or this is more important, or the not feeling uncomfortable having a conversation with us was more important than having a conversation with us. They felt that gap, and they've spent their entire lives trying to bridge that gap or figure it out or just completely disconnect from it. And so it took a close friend of mine sitting down with me, and this is probably 15 or 20 years ago, and walked me through how heavy a coming out narrative is.
Right.
The phone call was probably weeks or months, if not years, in the making. And it was really hard to do. Even if
I get that.
Right. So here's what's like, the back end of that is I'm getting on a plane. Or I'm putting you on a plane. Right. And
early on, he shared some reading material with me, and I read through everything he sent me.
That's fine. So, okay. So let's get to the, okay. But see, here's the thing. You don't need more data right now. You need relationship.
Right, exactly.
You don't need more
I do.
info.
That's exactly
There's not a thing he's going to tell you, and you're going to go, oh, okay. Right. And vice versa. There's not an argument you're going to give him, and he's going to be like, you know what? I didn't know that. That's not the way this is going to play out right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
He needs his mom.
Right.
Or she needs her mom, like whatever pronoun y'all decide to use. So let's go there. Here's the deal. Your child has put a boundary down and said, this is me right now, and this is me moving forward. You have your values. And what you have to decide is my relationship with my child more or less important than a previously established value? That's the conversation to have. What you can't do is say, we want to have a relationship with you on our terms. Because he is or she has told you what their terms are. And that's the hard part you find yourself in.
Well, part of the struggle has been this whole feeling like, I don't know this person. He wants to be called Rachel. I don't know this person, Rachel. Rachel, it feels like Rachel killed my son.
Yeah.
So,
and here's the other side of this conversation that never gets brought up. You're allowed to feel that way.
Right.
And you're allowed to feel sad. and you're allowed to have
Mhm.
had plans and pictures of grandkids in your head and what Thanksgivings are going to look like in yours. And now that picture is very, very different. You're allowed to
Right.
grieve that too. And that's left out of the conversation. Um, what you're allowed to do whatever you want to do because you're an adult.
Right.
The fewer secrets, the better for everybody.
Right.
And you're right. You don't know your child. You don't. And it's
Right. I
probably
know.
been that way for a long, long time. You had an image of your child that you
Right. I
thought you knew.
I knew him.
Right. And I would say even if he wasn't or she wasn't choosing to change their gender,
Right.
you still wouldn't know your child. You would have
Mhm.
your Rachel could still be Dan and have a wife and 5 kids, and you would not
Right.
know your child. And maybe that's the entry point. I love you, and I don't know you, and I want to get to know you because I love you.
Okay.
And you will have to decide, and every family's got to make these choices. And I'm not going to give you a pass and do it for you. You've got to choose: are we going to have a relationship with our child or not?
Right.
And if we are, then my child has established some boundaries and some expectations, and we have to decide whether we're going to meet those or not. And here, let's take the transgender thing, because that's a third real issue. Let's take that and move it away. This happened with, if you're going to come to my house, you have to wear a mask to be around my kids.
Mhm.
Or you can't wear a mask in my home. I don't want my kids seeing that kind of stuff. Or you have to be vaccinated, or you can't drink, or you can't come the day before Christmas because we're going somewhere else. Children put down boundaries, and then parents have to say, these are our values. Are we going to expand, shift, change, modulate out of, or double down on our previous values? Or are we going to double down on relationship?
I hear you.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
How much of this is about your child? How much of this is about being caught off guard? And how much of this is about, how am I going to tell my friends and my faith community and my whatever? Because a lot of times I hear it's about embarrassment.
Right. Well, initially there was some of that, but I have some experience in a counseling field,
Okay.
and so I'm very open with people.
Okay.
I am more so than my husband is. I would go and I would go and tell everybody just because this might help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I am. I'll tell you my experience because it might help you.
Okay.
And my husband is, nobody needs to know our business.
Okay. That's fair.
So.
My house is very similar to that.
Yeah.
So to simplify everything, your child has said, this is where I'm at, and do you love me?
Mm-hmm.
And you have an answer. You have a choice to make.
Right.
And it may be that your answer is different than your husband's answer. It may be that y'all's answer is together. It may be your answer is, we are going to double down on relationship first and engage in a series of conversations over the next few years. But the conversations aren't debates or discussions or whatever. The debates or the conversations are, I just want to get to know you.
Right. And that's what I want.
Yeah. So that's where I'd start. That's a humble, Control-Alt-Delete place to start.
Right.
And it's
There's
hard.
something I've been wondering as I've been listening through your program, and you talk about, I don't know if you're still talking about it, but in the part that I've listened, you've talked a lot about having like a formal funeral or something like that. So I've wondered if I should, if that would be helpful. I thought about it a little bit.
If you're there, I mean, if that's where this ultimately ends up, I think it's always good to have a moment.
Dream.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a funeral
dream
of your child. Yeah, because your child's still fully alive.
Right. But not, I mean, but of that dream that I had of the person I thought he was going to be.
It's important to acknowledge, I had this picture in my head, not that he or she created, but that you created.
Right.
And you put expectations into the world that your child was going to fulfill, that they are under
Right.
no obligation to fulfill. And every parent on planet Earth does
Right.
this, by the way. You're not the only one.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so something as little in my home is I just always played baseball. And my dad always played baseball. And my son was awesome at baseball. And then he came to us over the holidays and said, hey, would it be cool if I didn't play baseball and instead I did theater? I did theater too. I did it in college. I loved it. And I just had a picture of my kid playing baseball all the way through. And so
Right.
I didn't have a big funeral. I didn't have but I had to stop and go, yeah, of course you can, man. And I was really proud of him for having the conversation with us and coming to us with it. And communication is a big deal in our house. And so I'm so proud of him for doing that because I know that was hard for him. And I had to go, I kind of had pictures. I don't know even where they came from. I just had pictures of us going to high school baseball games, and we're not going to do that. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's important to hold that. I wouldn't have a funeral for your child.
Right.
It would be
I mean, I guess I've thought of that because it has felt so much. It feels like a death.
right.
But I know it's a death of a dream that I had.
It's grief. Yes.
Yeah,
it's
it
grief.
is grief.
And you're allowed to grieve. And anybody that tells you otherwise is not being honest with you. You're allowed to say, I hoped or had pictures of this and something else is happening. You can also grieve how much pain your kid's been in for a long time. Because whether you believe in the outcome, and that's a whole other conversation. If you believe in transgender this, and that's a whole other conversation. Everybody can agree your kid's been hurting for a long time. Sounds like both your sons have been hurting for a long time. And given your honesty about how you struggle with communication and how work comes first, and then when it's convenient, it's time you start and say, I'm sorry. And I'm ready to do this thing from the floor up. And I'm going to grieve what we lost together. I'm going to grieve that I wasn't there for you when you were hurting. And now I'm going to do the best I can to walk alongside you, whatever that looks like. Or you can choose now. You can choose, hey, if this is what you need and as the person you're choosing to become, your dad and I are opting out. That's your choice. People ask me my opinion on stuff, and I tell them what I would do, and I'll tell you, I'm going to choose relationship with my kids every time.